Okay, Jody, today we're going to do some math. And basically what I want you to look at is I wrote two things on the board here. I wrote 8 feet versus 98 inches. And then I wrote 12 yards versus 24 yards. So in the first problem, which one do you think is longer? Is it easy for you to figure that out?
No.
How about let's look at the second one, 12 yards versus 24 yards. Is that easy to figure out?
Yes.
So which one is longer?
24 yards.
Why do you think that was easier to figure out than the first one?
Because you have to convert feet and inches.
Yeah, so you have to figure it's 8 times 12 feet, which is 96 inches, right? 8 times 12 inches is 96, so we know the 98 is longer. But that's not easy for us to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to do another one, show you another one, and ask you which one is greater. There's 48 eggs or 60 eggs. Pretty easy to figure out which one's greater.
60.
What if I said 51 eggs and 5 dozen eggs?
That's a little harder. You have to do 5 times 12.
Yeah, here you're going to have to do 5 times 12 and figure out that that's 60. So we had to get them on the same, we have to know that it's 60 eggs, so we have to get them on the same level to know which one's bigger. I mean, if you're really good at math and could just look at it. But this one's easier because it's the same type of quantity, right? So it's easier to compare when the units are compared, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to write two fractions. One is 4/7 and one is 2/7. And then I'm going to write another one. These have the same denominators, right? Then I'm going to add another one, and it's 1/3 and 3/8. Okay, which fraction is greater on the first one? 4/7 and 2/7.
4/7.
Yeah, this is greater because it has the same denominator. What about the second one? 1/3 versus 3/8.
3/8 is almost a half, so.
So you're kind of estimating that it might be greater, but we're not really sure.
Yeah.
So we're going to learn a little bit more about how to compare two different fractions with denominators later, but it's easier when we know the denominators are the same to compare which one is greater, right? Okay, now we're going to look at 13 inches and 1 foot. And then, so what if I marked out and said 1 foot is actually 12 inches? Is that easier to compare?
Mm-hmm.
So we know 13 inches is greater than 12 inches, or 1 foot. So it's much easier to compare two lengths when we rewrite them. We're rewriting them using the same units. And that's really what we're going to be learning how to do with fractions. But what I'm going to show you right now is I have two fractions. One is 2/3. They're in blocks, and the other is 3/4. You see that? There's 3 units here, and there's 2 that I've blocked out, and then there's 3 out of 4 that I blocked out. So by looking at those, is it easy to figure out which one is greater? It's kind of because they're not the same units.
Not really.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you a way that we can look at these to determine which one is greater. I've created another block the same size, but I have converted it, I've actually made little squares that fit in it. And there's 3 across the top and 4, so there's 12 squares. Now if I put this over it, how many of the 12 squares do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4,
8.
5, 6, 7, 8. So would that be 8 twelfths? Rewrite it as 8 twelfths?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with the 3/4, I've done it the same way. If you can look underneath that, you can see that there are 9 twelfths. Now is it easier to see which one is greater?
Yeah. The 9.
9 twelfths. So we can find a common denominator in fractions, and that's what we want to do. To find a common denominator in fractions is we can multiply the numerator by the other denominator. So in this case, we had 3/4, and then we had 2/3, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I multiply, I'm taking the numerator right here, over here, and I'm going to not multiply that times 3. I'm going to multiply this one times 3, and that equals 9 twelfths, and they can be common. So for the 2/3, I'm going to multiply that times the denominator here. Both of them by the denominator. 2 times 4 equals 8, and then it's 8 twelfths. You see how I get how I find common denominators? I take the numerator of the other fraction and I multiply it times the denominator of the numerator of the fraction that we're each fraction.
Okay.
So let's try some other ones just to see how that works. Why don't you pick 2 fractions that are different, have different denominators?
6/8
6/8
and 1/4.
and 1/4. Okay, so what we can do here is we're going to do 6 times 4 and 8 times 4. So that's 24 30-seconds. And then here I'm going to do 4 times 8, and then I'm going to do 1 times 8. And then I'm going to have 30 seconds, so they have a common denominator, and 8 30-seconds. So which one's greater?
The 24th.
Yeah, so you think of another one?
3/5 and 2/3.
Okay, so now I would like you to show me how you would get a common denominator.
5 by 3 is 9/15.
Mm-hmm.
5 is 10/15.
Good. So then which one is greater?
The 2/3.
Mm-hmm. And I like that you use the greater than. Yeah, very good, Jody. Okay. And you have really nice little things that you use in there. That's really good. Now let's think of one more and see if you can do it on another one. Come up with 2 fractions that have different denominators.
4/7 and 2/3.
Okay.
12, 21, 14.
Okay, which one is greater?
The 2/3.
Mm-hmm. Good job. I think you really know how to to convert it. And it's going to make it easier when we convert if we're going to add or subtract fractions. And that's why it's important for us to know how to to make them have the same value, easier to use them together, right? So tomorrow we're going to work on adding two fractions, and we're going to do that after we learn how to make the common denominator like we did today. So good job, Jody.